we're recording this early December, and right now there's a lot of things going on around the Omicron variant of COVID-19 is sort of being detected for the first time, or we're seeing spikes of it. And in some ways, it feels like some of the same patterns of uncertainty and some of the emotional toll that causes for people are starting to come back again. And I more so just wanted to learn from you all, like, are you sensing similar patterns to some of the same burnout challenges going into Q1? Are there things sort of different now? Is there anything that you see around like the patterns of what's going on with employees and how they're emotionally processing some of these things that you find interesting?
I definitely see some of the patterns coming back a little bit, but it's hard to say, right? Every situation is so different, even with this new variant. But we've learned so much in this past year and a half of doing things differently, of how we gather is a huge thing. I remember when we started coming back and all of us had to be on video 100% of the time, chat 100% of the time, and you start questioning all the meetings that you have, do these really make sense? And the bar starts to rise really quickly because of the fatigue of a different way of gathering. And so I think some of those practices we've learned, and we'll keep doing those things moving forward. But again, even right now we're in hybrid mode. What does that mean? For some people, it means the same thing that it's been for the last year and a half. They don't feel comfortable going back to work. Their vaccine status may be different where they feel comfortable or not. And then now we have a new variant. I mean, it's just constant change and constant iteration, and we're learning as we go. So I think the more that we can be open to listening to what our employees need, also being vulnerable, how we're feeling, and bringing those two things together is how we're going to have to act differently. So yes, see a little bit of the same, hope we keep some of the best practices, but I think we're going to still do some things different.
Yeah, I would add one thing too. I think if I'm just share my own personal story, my husband and I were talking about this the other day. It's interesting because the reality of the roller coaster is real. So when I start to think about how excited I was to kind of feel like you're starting to come out and you see a light at the end of the tunnel and you're like, whoo, I have some chances to kind of go back to the way things were pre-pandemic, where you start to, I'm going to go get my nails done, or I'm going to go spend time with friends, or do whatever those things are. To start to get those things back to your activities you used to do. And then you hear in the news that there's a new variant, and the reality of like, whoa, okay, how does that pull you back a little bit? So I highlight that because I think that's what employees are going through as well, and leaders. It's like, are we coming out? Are we going in? Where are we at? When is it actually going to stop? But the skills that we've learned between the last 19 months that we can apply are super important. So when we think about leadership, one of the things I tell leaders in our company, you know how to be a great leader in person. You've proven you can be a great leader virtually over the last 19 months. So you've added a whole new set of skills. So now you just have to figure out how to apply what you need when you need it, because you have a whole toolkit worth of skills now that you can apply to wherever we find ourselves. But the acknowledgement of, okay, we're where we were. Okay, so I'll go back to some of my old ways of processing how I work with the team. I'm coming out. We're going to start to have lunch in person, or we're going to go in the office a little bit. I know how to do that in person. So really giving ourselves some grace around, we've added so many new skills over the last 19 months. We just now have to be super agile, but also be honest with ourselves about how are we feeling and how does that energy potentially translate to our teams. And then how do we open up the dialogue? Because on any given day, employees are feeling in any place on that spectrum, and being able to kind of work in that mode is what I think leaders will need now and in the future. Flexibility and approach. There's so much change happening in the world right now. We got to be able to pivot quickly. And that's a skill set. And I think that's something we picked up over the last 19 months.